I screamed, ran out of my room, and yelled, "Dad, I saw a huge spider! Can you come kill it?" I hope the man standing in my closet didn't notice that I saw him, or realize the fact that I was actually home alone.
I'm your host, Scary Pops, and everybody loves a good scare. So let's get into it. A few years ago, my boss went on holiday for a couple of weeks to Spain. Midway through the holiday, he got a phone call from the police informing him that his sister had passed away in a fire in her house. So he rushed back home early to deal with the police and the passing and everything. My employers told him to take some time off to grieve, which he definitely did. But when he came back to work on a Monday morning a few weeks later, we invited him into our coffee room to talk and offer our sympathy and support. But an hour later, he excuses himself to start work. He walks into his office and he sits down at his desk and he turns on his computer and he checks to see if there's any phone messages. And the very first message that plays is his sister screaming down the phone, "Help me! Help me! I'm trapped! I can't breathe!" I awoke as my kid moved down the hallway on all fours, creepily stumbling towards me at 3 a.m. I shouted for her to stop. Then I rolled over in bed and froze when I found my only daughter already sleeping beside me. I'm working the night shift alone tonight, but there's a face in the cellar staring at the security camera. The driver wasn't very chatty, so I checked my phone. All of a sudden the message said, "Hey, it's your Uber. I'm outside. Can you give me a blanket, please? It's really cold here." Her voice echoed through the cold room as I watched her shivering under the white sheet. I'm putting on my earphones because I realized and learned it's best to ignore these complaints after a decade of working the night shift in the morgue. I stopped on the Cinnabar Way in Truckee and wanted to snap a picture of the city sign just to prove that I was there to the friends who dared me to take that route. I got back in my car and proceeded to drive up into the mountain range. And once I reached the top, I'm driving north through a canyon with high grass on both sides of the road. But up ahead, I see some stuff in the middle of the road. As I approach, I slow down and see a red Pontiac Fiero stop sideways across both lanes. A suitcase open with clothes scattered everywhere, and two bodies laying face down in the road, a man and a woman. I stopped 100 feet or so away, and the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. But being the Marines, I was prepared. I reached under the seat and pulled out a 9mm pistol and chambered around. Something seemed very wrong. It looked too perfect, as if it was staged, an ambush. I mean, was I being paranoid? Was it something that you would see in a horror movie? I mean, if I got out of the car, it would seem unthinkable that something was just wrong. As I scanned the road, I saw a line I could drive past the guy in the road on his left, swerve to the right side of the woman behind the Fiero, and I'd be on the other side. I dropped it into first gear and punched it and drove the line I planned. I passed the back of the arrow without hitting it or either of the bodies on the road. I continued forward a couple hundred feet and slowed down so I could breathe. I let my heart slow down. But as I looked up into the rearview mirror, I saw that the two bodies had gotten up to their knees, and 20 or so people emerged from the tall grass on either side of the road. At that moment, my right foot smashed the gas pedal to the floor, and I did not let up until I got to the on-ramp. I will never know what would have happened to me had I gotten out of the car to check on the bodies or stopped my car closer to them. Somehow I did not think it would have been good. And sometimes real life can be scarier than a movie.
Being a delivery driver for several pizza places a few years back, I had a lot of experiences with weird customers or just strange things that would happen at night. But this one night takes the prize for the most disturbing and unusual situation. I had been working at the specific chain pizza shop for just under a year. I worked mid-shifts and night shifts alongside one other coworker for the most part. It would stay busy basically up until closing at 2 a.m., so there wasn't a ton of time to mess around, especially since it was just the two of us. I'll call my coworker Tom to keep his privacy. Tom was older than me by a few years and was a quiet, hard worker. He was in charge during the night shifts and would make all the pizzas while I would deliver them. Both of us would answer calls though, depending on who was busy and who wasn't. Anyway, it was just past 11 p.m. and I had gotten back from a delivery when the phone rang. Seeing Tom in the middle of making a pizza, I picked up the phone. A man on the other line spoke, asking for a large sausage pizza. I put in the order and asked if he needed anything else. The man didn't answer for a moment. Then he repeated himself, saying that he'd like a large sausage pizza. This time, I could tell through the way he mumbled it out that he was likely drunk. I confirmed that he just wanted one pizza, and the man said yes. I sent the order through, then grabbed my next delivery and dropped it off. Getting back to the shop, Tom had finished the guy's order and prepped it for delivery, so I grabbed it off the counter and ran to my car. I noticed as I was grabbing the order though, Tom was giving me a weird look, as if he wanted to say something to me, but he decided not to. Again though, Tom was pretty quiet and soft-spoken, so it wasn't very odd. The address was a good 15 minutes away, but there was no traffic at this time, so I got there pretty early. The house was normal, but had a lot of land on either side, with the neighbors' homes barely visible through the trees. I got out and went around to the passenger door to pick up the pizza. Then I headed up to the porch and knocked on the door. A few seconds later, a man came and opened the door wide open. This wasn't all that strange, but I always found it odd when people would open their door that wide, as it was just unnecessary. But his face when he saw me seemed very confused and surprised, as if he hadn't expected to see me. Figuring he was just drunk and out of it, I handed him the box and told him his total, to which he slowly and awkwardly handed me cash, not saying anything. He held the box of pizza while standing in front of me and looked at it with a strange intensity. Then he moved his eyes up towards me, but not at me. He was looking over my shoulder like he saw something, but was just staring at it with that same intensity before shaking his head slowly like he was saying no. Getting really uncomfortable watching this man, I couldn't help but look back. I turned my head over my right shoulder and looked toward the driveway. Just a few feet from my car was a hooded man running back toward the trees. My heart jumped and I felt my body go into a sort of shock, trying to figure out what to do. I turned back around to face the man at the door, but he immediately stepped back and slammed the door shut. It all happened so fast, in just a matter of seconds, and gave me no time to react. With the door closed in front of me, I turned to face the hooded man again, but he was lost in the dark tree line. I stumbled off the porch and ran to my car, backing out of the driveway as soon as possible and driving back to work. I calmed myself during the drive, but still couldn't understand what happened. When I got back, I told Tom about the encounter, who seemed to have very little reaction and rather just told me to deliver the next order when I was ready. I did as he said, but on my way back from the delivery, I ended up pulling over and calling the police to let them know just in case. They said they would have an officer check it out and call me back to update me. I got a call an hour later, and once I got out of work, I waited in the parking lot for the police to show up and talk to me. When the officer came up to my car, he mentioned that he talked to the man at the residence who matched the description I gave him, and the guy told the officer that he was just waiting for his buddy, Tom, to show up since he knew he worked at the pizza shop. When asked about the hooded man, he gave no details, saying he didn't know anything about that and he didn't see anyone. With that information, I was even more horrified and confused. I thought maybe they called thinking Tom was a delivery driver and were setting him up so that they could jump him. That would explain the hooded man by my car and the surprise of the guy at the door. I also think back to that look Tom gave me, thinking maybe he was going to warn me of something. I talked to Tom on multiple occasions about it though, but he gave me quick, useless answers, saying the guy was just an old friend and that he didn't know anything about anything. I moved on to another pizza shop very soon after that incident. But now that the horror of the situation is in the past, and I know it likely wasn't a target on me specifically, I enjoy trying to figure out the mystery. I still don't know for sure what the situation was, but it was by far the strangest and creepiest I've ever had.